This is such a topic near and dear to my heart, and I promise I'm not going to embarrass you, but I totally have to share this too. So here I am talking about friendship, and lo and behold, someone that I haven't seen in 20 years, but was a dear, dear friend from childhood, happens to be here. And she said, "Did you happen to grow up in Virginia Beach?" And I said, "Yes, and I know you." And we spent the night. So it was awesome. And I won't share her name just in case, but I totally remembered everything. And it's just, it really speaks to the power of friendship. And this is really a topic, again, that's so near and dear to my heart. My goal today is to hopefully drive home the point, especially for moms, that it's something that's just so important for you to be able to prioritize, because I think so many of us don't do that. So thinking through here, I want you to sort of continuously think, hopefully, about what are some things that you do for your emotional and mental health. And hopefully, by the end of today, friendship and nourishing your friendship and spending time on your friendship will be one of those things. And believe it or not, it should be something that you do for your physical health as well, which I think is something that a lot of us don't necessarily think about. So I like to start by thinking about why friendship is important, because believe it or not, friendship actually is evolutionary. We tend to think of it as a modern luxury, sort of a social type of thing that came out in modern history, but in reality, we needed friends even in evolutionary time. So thinking about foraging for food, hunting and gathering, that is sort of bred into us to be able to be with other people, to collaborate, to watch out for each other, because if we didn't do that, quite frankly, it was very easy to get eaten by a woolly mammoth. I think for women in particular, when they would join husbands' tribes, they would then become part of the husband's family. So a lot of theorists believe that the reason why women are sort of bred to value friendship even more, perhaps, is because evolutionarily speaking, we had to really bond with people who were not genetically related to us, but who also could become like family in that sense. And so basically that had to happen all the time. There's so many benefits of friendship. I could spend the entire time on the talk talking about that. I mean, they spur creativity, they spur innovation. So many artists of our time have had muses that have brought out better ideas than they would have had alone. Interestingly enough, the research tells us that friends actually relieve loneliness better than siblings and spouses do, which I know we're not supposed to think that anybody matters more than our spouse, but it's very interesting that sometimes friends actually can provide an antidote to that depression and loneliness in a way that partners sometimes can't. There's a lot of research that says that religious folks are happier than non-religious folks, and one of the main reasons for that has been proposed is that a religious faith really also provides a community to socialize, to support each other, to nourish each other. And so I think that's an important thing to remember as well. And with altruism, it's not just our friends helping us, but the research shows that when we help our friends, we get a huge mood boost from that. And so the ability to help a friend is actually really beneficial for your mental health. It's a protective factor against all kinds of things, the things that I work with on a daily basis. The more social support you have, the less likely you are to suffer from PTSD after a trauma, or to be able to, the less likely you are actually to develop clinical depression. And it's not a magic bullet that completely prevents it, but can actually really reduce your odds of it and make it less severe when it does happen. Maybe if you have a close friend, you've had this experience of a friend knowing you better than you know yourself. And that sometimes can really give you a reality check. There's all kinds of interesting research about friends better able to predict our behavior than we are. Sometimes it's unflattering. You don't want to think that you're going to do that. Your friend really knows. But it's another way that they bring something to our lives. Now, a lot of times when I talk to older audiences, I really emphasize it's interesting how much social support protects against cognitive decline. So, maybe we're not quite in that stage, although oftentimes I cannot find my keys, but the more friends you have, the more nourishing social relationships you have, you actually can ward off the onset of dementia, push it back a little bit. It's very, very important, and that's why the isolation that often comes with age and increased age can be so devastating. So in terms of our bodies, believe it or not, social support helps you have lower blood pressure. There's all kinds of research on friendship and physical things. Thresholds for pain are higher when you laugh. So if you have friends that particularly make you laugh, that can help you deal with chronic pain a lot more. Our friends motivate us for healthier habits. So, we're talking about friends. Ideally, they're healthy friends. Of course, sometimes they're not wonderfully healthy friends. But when they are healthy, our health improves too. All kinds of interesting research on emotional contagion and health behavior contagion, in the sense that you can actually become healthier just because your friends are becoming healthier with you. And they're watchdogs for health issues. We've all had that friend that's like, you need to get that mole checked out. And that is helpful, because without that collaboration, sometimes they can sort of spur us to get us the health issues checked out that we need. The lifespan research, if you've got more friends, you live longer. It's fascinating. And by more friends, I should qualify it that it's quality relationships. In fact, one of the longest studies was actually of men. Oh my gosh, it was the Harvard Grant study, it was called. I mean, they followed these guys from when they were undergrads at Harvard in their 1930s. They followed them all the way through modern times, still following them. They measured everything. I mean, I'm talking they even measured like scrotum length while standing, which I don't have a visual for that, thankfully. But everything was measured. And one of the main predictors of longevity and health in their now 70s and 80s was how good their relationships were in their 20s, which is pretty striking stuff. In fact, a lot of the meta-analyses say that if you have few quality social ties, that's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes per day. So the number crunchers have come up with that, and it's really striking. All kinds of chronic illnesses have an improved prognosis with friendship and quality social support. The problem, of course, especially if you're like me and specialize in friendship, is that it's devalued by society. I mean, I wrote a book on friendship, and it was kind of a strange process in the beginning, because it was labeled a self-help book, and as embarrassing as that was that I wrote a self-help book, it really didn't fit in with a lot of self-help books, because they're always about dating, it's like that's all that women care about. It's like that all women are heterosexual and want to find a man. So all the books are finding a man, keeping a man, dumping a man. I say the only thing that I haven't seen yet is how to embalm a man. That has not yet been there. But it's really, we don't think about friendship. And yet, in my private practice as a psychologist, I really have noticed that it's the day-to-day friendships that can sink or swim some of these folks' mental health, and that we focus so much on partners and family, we forget that the good, the bad, and the ugly oftentimes comes from friendships. Now, this leads to a problem, because oftentimes we know we want friendships, and it's tricky, So like, let's say you've moved to a new city, or you have kids for the first time, and all your friends don't have kids yet, and it's a new phase, and you're looking for friends. There's no script for that. Luckily with dating, or unluckily if the pickup line is really bad, but there is kind of a script. You have this idea, this is what somebody wants from me. This is what is going on. With friend making, I've worked with so many women who say, I literally don't know what to do. Like, do I go up to a woman at the park and say, you don't look too crazy, should we meet at the same time tomorrow? And it's very awkward. And then people are like, I don't want to sort of be like a stalker. She's going to think I'm weird. So it's very, very difficult at times. But the first thing that I want to emphasize is to normalize this. There are always times in our lives when we could use new friends. It's the way that life transitions work. And so it makes sense first to take a step back and say, it's okay to feel like you don't have any friends. It's a problem that can be solved. So many people, there's like this shameful feeling. It really harkens back to second grade and not getting as many Valentines as someone else, or not being at the cool kid table in high school. And you really have to think, okay, friendships have to do a lot of times with proximity. And if we happen to sort of make a new stage of our lives and leave that stage, it's natural that some friendships are going to fall off. Now, with moms in particular, we really struggle, I think, because there's this idea that motherhood is such an all-encompassing endeavor that, God forbid, we go to happy hour once in a while, or if our kid has a stomach bug, we're certainly not going to keep that, that brunch date that we had and that kind of thing. And I think this mentality is really, really damaging. I think it's very problematic because I think we really do ourselves a disservice when we don't allow ourselves to have time to develop friendship. I mean, let's think about it. When we sort of view friendship as a luxury, that it's something that is indulgent, it's me time, we take away a lot of opportunities, first of all, for ourselves to feel better. And the truth is, since friendship is such a stress reliever in so many ways, we actually can become better caregivers. We can become better spouses and partners and co-workers by having that benefit of being able to be with our friends. Also, too, I work with so many moms who are like, oh, you know, I just can't be in that book club anymore. It was just too hard to go out once a month in the evenings, even though I really loved it and I love those women. And it's kind of like, okay, well, think of the lesson that you could teach your child, that friendship matters, that we make time for friends, that as a mom, I'm not just a mom. I'm also somebody that has relationships outside of the family that mean something to me and that I nourish and I prioritize. And I think that's a very valuable thing that we often forget because our kids are watching everything we do, and it's a great opportunity to show them the lesson that we're going out. You don't have to mention that there will be a lot of margaritas when you go out. You can just say, I'm spending time with friends, and this is something that we should be doing. So think to yourself, you know, what do you typically let get in the way of friendship? You know, I work with so many folks that maybe they have a lot of friends that they like, but they just can't find the time to stay with them. Or maybe it really is they have a bunch of friends, but they feel like they're drifting away and they're not very connected. Sometimes the problem is that the friendships themselves are toxic. And so it's like, yeah, I got some friends, but they're driving me insane. And so we can sort of troubleshoot thinking about what the problem is. So thinking about, you know, for folks that really feel like they don't have a lot of friends, friendships happen so naturally when there's close proximity. And of course, we go to school together. That happens naturally. If we go to college, we're in the dorm. We're having meals with each other all the time. We're sleeping maybe only yards away from each other. We have things in common. And then you become an adult and that disappears. You know, it's like you don't have that naturally occurring community anymore. And it can really throw you off. A lot of us might find it at work. But some of our coworkers are crazy, and we don't want to do that, you know. Or a lot of us can maybe find it in a neighborhood, but neighborhoods really aren't often what they used to be because everyone sort of goes a little bit more privately than they used to be in terms of sitting outside in various neighborhoods. So the key is to try to find a way, of course, to build community, even if that naturally occurring proximity isn't there. But I work with a lot of women that say, well, the problem isn't meeting people. I mean, I know people, I see people at preschool drop-off, I see other women at the carpool line, there are other moms at the playground, there are other moms in moms groups. The problem is I can't seem to take that acquaintanceship to a friendship. And that's where the whole stalker thing comes in. Like, I don't know, like how do you platonically ask someone out on a date that's not a date? But it's weird, there's no script for that. And so, you know, a lot of times you have to get back to basics. A lot of these seem so simple, but I'm constantly amazed how many times for us it's hard to actually take those steps. Like questions to show interest. A lot of times people get really nervous and they're really good listeners in a conversation, and they don't want to be intrusive, so they don't ask enough questions. Or they do ask a question, but then they're already nervous about what the next question is going to be and they don't listen to the answer. Questions are so important to actually show that you're connecting. You know, follow-up questions. This is key from sort of taking that acquaintanceship to friendship. You know, so many times it's like you have the same conversation with somebody over and over again, and they're really neat, and you want to make a friend, but you just don't know how. You know, you're stuck talking about the weather all the time, every single time. And it's like, okay, there's weather. That exists. Like, we need to actually move from that. And one way, of course, is to follow up. It's as simple as remembering that she said that her air conditioning was busted, and so the next time asking about that. And then you're already at the next level of A, showing that you actually listened, and B, showing that you're interested and that you remembered and that you want to jump off from that. Of course, with texting now, and I could give a whole nother speech on technology, but one benefit is that it is a little bit easier to sort of get in there with a follow-up if you happen to have then started to text. But eye contact, so many folks don't realize the body language piece is so important, and we think that we sort of are naturally doing it, but then we realize we are looking at our phone, or we're looking past somebody's head, or we're nervous and we're looking down. Eye contact, body language, the other thing is some people never reveal anything about themselves. The research shows that when you can self-disclose a little bit, maybe even say something that makes you a little vulnerable, people like that. People connect with that. But so often it feels like, well, I don't want to monopolize the conversation, so I'm not going to say anything about myself. Of course, so often it's the opposite too. But reasonable self-disclosure to increase the emotional intimacy, that's going to help cement a friendship. And of course, the biggie, initiative and planning. Everybody's always scared to plan stuff. Everybody's so busy. I want to do this. I don't want to have people over at my house. Or I threw out a date, but nobody could do it, and that's it. I'm done. Basically, friendships never really get off the ground, at least offline, if there's not at least a little initiative. Even if it's as simple as having coffee, you actually have to ask. And sometimes a good excuse is trying something new together. So there's, a goofy Groupon for a trapeze class in Sunday afternoon, and actually suggesting that you do it. And of course, the other thing, a lot of friendships die in the vine because there's a lull in communication, and now it's awkward, and it seems weird to just check in out of the blue because I really should have responded to that email, but I forgot, and it was in the other folder, and now I haven't, and now it's weird, and now I owe her like a 10-page email about how I'm doing. No, just check in and see how it goes, and that often takes care of it. Now, moms in particular, we have some of these issues that are unique. Judgment, right? We hear about the mommy wars all the time. I've done a lot of writing and speaking on the mommy wars, quote unquote. I hate that phrase. It's so polarizing. In my experience, it's not black and white. Most moms I know aren't sort of, all or none with their thinking. A lot of moms are neither working nor staying at home completely, like myself. It's a hybrid of the two. And yet, our media, of course, sort of sets up a false modality in this sense, that you're either this side or the other side. And then by that, you really have to feel like you're against the other group. And so, I think sometimes we do get a little bit into that. Our identity as moms can be so all-encompassing that it becomes about whether you use this type of diaper or whether you breastfed or those types of things. And sometimes the judgment spirals out of control and, of course, gets a little toxic. Most often I see, baggage from our past coming up to haunt us. Like, oh my gosh, that elementary school, the PTA, it's like Mean Girls all over again. That element of the cliques, feeling whatever you felt back in your past history and having to revisit that every time you're in the carpool line because there's that element of that same past baggage. Or self-doubt. I work with a lot of women who are like, still kind of carrying stuff around. I'm not interesting enough. Nobody's going to really want to hang out with me. I don't have that much to offer. And you have to really explore, where is this coming from? And obviously, most of the time, it's not accurate. You're really doing yourself a disservice by having that voice in your head. Of course, the classic, as we kind of touched on, putting everybody else first. I can't go out. My kids need me. I don't want my husband to have to watch them this weekend because he had a hard week or whatever, or the guilt of it, feeling so busy that we cannot make time. Of course, there's other things too. Sometimes we're looking for this perfect match, like a jigsaw puzzle. Like, okay, I love this mom, but I don't like her husband, or our kids hate each other. They can't be in the same room, so we can never hang out. Or, oh, my husband doesn't like anybody, so I have to send him on play dates, and he doesn't like this guy, and he doesn't. It doesn't have to be a perfect match. A lot of times we're looking for like that family we can vacation with. It doesn't have to be that. So get rid of the perfectionism about that. A lot of times incompatible needs is pretty classic. One person wants to talk all the time, every day. And the other person is overwhelmed by that. Or one person really, you're going to be number 1 on their list, and for the other person, it's maybe number 8 or 9, and that can be difficult. course, we've got all our classic types of, mom stereotypes that I think can be very harmful, but nonetheless sort of exist. There's the sanctimommy sort of idea. Oh, I don't know where any fast food restaurants are because I've never fed my child fast food. And they've never had dirt or air or, it gets very uncomfortable because then it's a competition, right? There's the people who kind of flake out. You try to get something going and they just don't show up. A few of them might have been involved tonight with that problem, I think. And it's like, people have different thresholds for canceling plans. Some people aren't going to cancel plans no matter what, and other people, I just kind of don't want to go anymore. And so you kind of have to deal with that sometimes. Again, the competitors. There are so many ways that we judge each other because that's almost like what we've been set up to do, whether it's how early your kid is walking or, how much of the pregnancy weight you lost. It's so hard sometimes if you have that sort of competition to feel valuable within a relationship. The passive aggressors, these are always fun. The folks that are like, I'm so in awe of you. I don't know how you do it. I mean, God, I don't think I could handle it if my kid was that loud and my house that small. It's like, that's no longer a compliment, And the drainers, people who they mean well, but there's an imbalance from the start. They really take a lot emotionally, logistically. And there's always, I think sometimes, because none of us are capable of doing any of these transgressions, and nobody's in that room. But, these are the things that I tend to see about other people that my clients are complaining about. The hot and cold folks, you feel really great. She's so happy to see you, and you hang out, and it's awesome. And then the next time at the carpool line, she's kind of like, she doesn't care that you're there. So all these things I think can exist to some extent with moms, but in truth, sometimes it just means it's not a good match or it's a bad dynamic that's being set up, and that's okay because the truth is it's a numbers game. So many times it's like, oh, we're going to stick our neck out and try to become a friend with somebody, and we think that it should go perfectly. Well, we didn't expect to marry the first person we ever went on a date with, thank God, but somehow we think that a friendship is supposed to just take off, and if it doesn't, then something's wrong with us. It wasn't interesting enough. And it's because, friendship really isn't monogamous, so we think they should have room for me, they should like me. In reality, no, quit being so hard on yourself. You just have to put forth more effort in meeting additional people. Now, sometimes, again, the problem is, hey, I've got a lot of friendships, and they don't feel so good. So working with people where it's mainly thinking about time to end a friendship, oftentimes some signs really come up. A lot of times it's like you're feeling drained after the outings. It's like feeding the parking meter. You kind of got to go there and hang out, but afterwards, it's not because you're tired, it's not because it was a bad time, but you consistently just feel like it's too much taken out of you. Friction, stagnation, and it's long-standing. It's like we always sort of have this edge to us, or we always kind of feel a little bored in each other's company. And it's not recent, and it's not just a phase, but it's really a sense of a long-standing pattern. A lot of times I work with women that say, every time I hang out with her, I get catty, and I say things that aren't really nice. I feel edgy, and you have to ask yourself why. If you don't like the person that you're being when you're with that person or that friend, what is that dynamic? I mean, if it's going on with all your friends, that's one thing, but if it's with a specific relationship, it might be a mismatch. A lot of times the problem is reciprocity. A good friendship over time has balance, whereas we've all had those friendships where one person is taking, and we feel like we're not getting anything in return. Honestly, the opposite is sometimes a problem too. Somebody who's constantly giving, and then you feel overwhelmed because you feel like you are taking advantage. A lot of times it's the guilt and the sense of duty or fear that's trapping you. Well, I've been friends with her for a long time. I know she's going through a lot. I've got to really stick this out even though she doesn't treat me very well. Or you don't feel appreciated for who you are. Like she doesn't really know me. She thinks I'm someone I'm not. Or my biggest sort of aspects of the personality she doesn't really get it. Of course, when your behaviors are turning unhealthy, that's often a sign that maybe the friendship is running its course and is not necessarily good for you. And whether it is any number of things, unhealthy behaviors physically or mentally, you can really look at that as an opportunity to evaluate. And I always, recommend people really think about how the person actually is as a person. A lot of times, oh yeah, my best friend, yeah, she's great. Well, she's really not so great. She's kind of catty and she's pretty selfish and she's pretty unreliable. And then after a point, it's like, okay, so is this the person that you want to be devoting your time to? But of course, you've got to ask yourself, is it a pattern or a phase? Because I work with a lot of folks that are depressed, for instance, or anxious. And they're terrible friends. If you've ever had a friend or yourself go through depression, you realize you're not returning phone calls, you're kind of irritable, you've slinked off the face of the planet, you're flaking. So it's important to remember we still owe a good friendship to be there for that person in that situation. But when it's a long-standing pattern, when it's constantly, it's not changing. It's not that they're going through a tough phase and we need to sort of give more. It's that this is how it is. They're selfish or they're toxic. Then it's really time to think about letting go. And of course, letting go could be a talk in and of itself. I'll skip that for now because I do want to have some time to take questions. But I think we need to really focus on the fact overall that this is sometimes a natural end to a friendship when it happens. That oftentimes, life transitions are what bring the end to friendships, and that's okay, that a friendship doesn't need to last forever to have meaning, and that it can still give us so many of the health benefits that we've talked about, even if it's only for a period of time. Or, who knows, maybe 20 years later, you will see the friend again and pick right back up where you left off. But I think so many of us put pressure on ourselves. I'm too old to make new friends because the ones I have are good enough even though I don't see them anymore. Or, oh, I've got to hold on to this one friend and even though it's not good, I've got to keep going. It's okay to let a friendship go. It doesn't mean that it was negated. It doesn't mean that the value of the friendship is totally gone. I like to close on this quote. Anais Nin, of course, did all kinds of racy writing that had nothing to do with friendship. But this quote I've always loved of hers. Each friend represents a world in us, a world not possibly born until they arrive. Because really, I can talk about the research on friendship all I want, but the truth is we're all human beings and we all bring different things to the table. And one of the most amazing things about friendship is that you just don't know what you're going to get. I mean, sometimes that's a terrifying thing about friendship, but when it's another human being, they can open you up to so many new worlds. And really, when you're at a funeral or a memorial service and you think about what people are talking about, it's those relationships, the relationships that people developed, the relationships that really gave life meaning. And so if there's one thing that you take from today, I really hope it's the idea that prioritizing friendship, it's as important as prioritizing the gym or flossing or, whatever those New Year's resolutions are that we never keep. That's another talk altogether too. But friendship, it's so pleasurable and it's so simple, but it also brings us immense benefits. And so I think if we can let ourselves do that and maybe have a glass of wine as we do it, that is my goal for you, because it's really amazing how few of us let ourselves do that. And so you can treat it as a health necessity. And I thank you so much. I would love to take questions if you have them.